Welcome to We're Libertarians. My name is Chris Spangle. Thanks so much for joining me. We have a whole cast of characters today. So many people. I know I keep trying to get away from libertarians and they keep showing up in my studio. So we're going to cover the Libertarian Party convention with people who actually went to the convention and still care. And so I'm going to ask them what happened because I didn't pay attention to any of it. And I'm sure you didn't either. So I'm going to ask people who ran for vice president and Paul, what happened? So stay tuned here on We Are Libertarians. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here on We Are Libertarians, and we greatly appreciate you joining us. We have a whole cast of characters, like I mentioned. Thankfully, we have a 4K wide-angle lens, and not just because Luke's here. Now, Luke Lomax, longtime listener, first-time podcaster, right? Yeah, I don't think you've actually been on the show, have you?
I have never been on a podcast at all.
Okay, but you've been, you were a patron for a long time. You're a friend of Chris Galt. You've been a listener for many years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been about 5 years since before I was active in the party.
But that means put the mic up.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
It's been about 5 years since before I was ever even associated with the Libertarian Party. I've been listening to you guys and, the old stuff. And Chris always got me involved in it, especially when he was on, so.
Luke holds a special place in my heart because one year I'm at the state fair riding the state fair tractor train, and I see a guy wearing a We Are Libertarians t-shirt. It's probably 2015, 2017, probably 17-ish. And I'm like, that can't be. That can't be the Torch of Liberty We Are Libertarians limited edition t-shirt. And sure was, and it was Luke Lomax, and it was very exciting.
I went up to you and called you dear leader in front of my wife, and she asked me, who was that? And I was like, that is the dear leader of the Libertarian Party. That's Chris Spangle. If you don't know him, you should.
You did fangirl a little bit.
I did, a little bit. You're right.
Yeah. Also here is Kristen Alexander. You're going to talk like real close to this thing, so you can move this thing.
I don't know how to do this. That's my first one in person.
You've never done a podcast before?
Not in person.
Okay. We probably should have tested the mics, but we're not that professional here. Yeah. So, Kristen Alexander.
Chris Spangle, what can I do for you?
When did you get involved in? You came way after my time in the LP.
I got involved in 2018 when Danny Lundy ran in Mooresville.
Okay.
So not too long ago, but I got Liberty Curious in 2016 with Gary Johnson.
Okay.
I've been active hardcore since 18.
And you somehow ended up running for vice president?
I withdrew before I ran, but I was asked to join Chase's campaign so that we could spread our message to the younger generation. We thought that a gay man and a pretty woman might, especially under 40, might bring in some of those apathetic millennial and Gen Z voters, people who are ready for change.
Yes, there's a reason she's the barrier for
the diversity.
We put her over here on the good camera just so people know there are women libertarians. You're like the third one on the podcast, so it's exciting. And then also here, I know you're tired of hearing that. Producer Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Chris.
Someone requested that you be on this podcast.
Have they been red flagged? That's a sign of mental health crisis.
I think here, hand the mic to him. It was Adam Newmeyer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, poor Adam.
He doesn't know any better.
We're still going to be working on that caucus, Adam. Don't worry.
And then also here for the second episode in a row, Reinhold.
Hopefully we can hear me now. So.
Oh, you know what we forgot to do is send the link to Hody. Oops. All right, let me send it to Hody. Yeah.
We were doing this tonight.
I'll explain that to Hody.
No, he thought it was yesterday.
Yeah, he was ready yesterday.
Sure, he was chomping.
He's so eager. He was ready to go.
No, but I didn't go to the convention this year. I was supposed to. I was going to be a delegate, but personal issues, I was not able to get out there. So I get the perspective of watching it all on YouTube and all the fun stuff that happened on there that they might not know about.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of it. I did end up going and watching the Trump speech just because so many of you in the chat were like, "You've got to see this," and it did end up being pretty awesome. I'm very open to my enthusiasm for anything political these days is waning. Anything Libertarian Party. I love you guys. I love hanging out with you. I come to stuff to see my friends, but I hope you win everything. I'm just not going to do anything about it, Paul.
And that's a shame, Chris. Your leadership is sorely missed.
I know it is. I know it is.
He's only interested when there's a real drama, and I think that it's starting to pique up his interest again with all the drama.
It's not at all.
enough?
But I did this because Adam asked nicely. And if we didn't give Reinhold a chance to come on in one episode to talk about Trump getting arrested and then the death of the Mises Caucus in the next episode, I had to have Reinhold here. Are you dehydrated?
I have been taking care to make sure that I have replacing bodily fluids as necessary.
Okay, good. I'm sure you were beside yourself with joy. So I don't even know where do we start with the convention. So we're going to recap the convention, talk a little bit about. We're not going to go too in the weeds. You have to remember, because I don't know anything, this audience probably doesn't know much either. We're not talking to people who were at the convention. We're talking to people who are libertarian and curious, who are kind of interested in the convention and kind of the behind the scenes of it, but they don't know as much as you guys. So Luke, you're going to have to, in vivid detail, you can't just mention, Bruce Majors and expect everybody to know that, right? You gotta explain to the people. So, like, if you were to tell the story of the 2024 convention, and any one of you can start, what would the first thing that you'd bring up from this convention that you'd talk about? Luke, go ahead. Hand the mic to Luke there.
I'll say this is my first convention. So
Okay.
I've been to 3 state party conventions, but this is my first national convention as a delegate. I was invited to Reno, but I couldn't make it out. I was just kind of dumbfounded with the sheer number of libertarians in the room. I think 973 delegates the first night, and 450 versus 480, basically, as far as the room split was. Talking about credentialing committees and who was allowed to vote and all of that stuff. So I feel like I got a little bit of a glimpse as to what to expect if I'm ever in Congress someday, because it's like herding cats. You have a bunch of anti-establishment people in the same room trying to come to one unified decision on something, and
it was insane.
It's insane. It's beating your head against the wall. But on the contrary, and this is I've said this a couple of times in the chat rooms and things like that, Chris. You say it wonderfully that libertarians tend to fight until they meet each other in person, and then it's amicable. And that was my experience. Going outside for nicotine breaks during the breaks in the convention and stuff like that. I met so many people from so many different states, and it was fantastic. Like, I honestly can't wait to be a delegate again in 2 years, even despite the 15-hour days on Sunday. It was a real experience that I've never had before, and I'm kind of thirsty for it again, to be honest with you. Like, it was a blast. Even despite all of the turmoil and all of the trouble and all of the crap that we had to put up with, it was a blast.
Tom asked, where's Harry? Harry declined to participate. I don't know if he's doing yoga or what. He had something going on tonight, and he just couldn't make it work. And this is not like I've already tricked him into 2 Libertarian Party events this year. I'm not going to trick him into a third. How many conventions, Paul and Kristen, have you all been to?
This was my first one.
First one,
Got
and
my cherry.
okay. How about you, Paul?
This will be my 4th.
Oh, okay.
Including the equally disastrous 2020 split convention.
Okay, so Hody Johns joins us. Hody, you don't know this, but we forgot to send you the link.
Okay. I'll do my best to recover the feelings.
How about now? Can you hear us now?
I hear you now.
Okay. All right. I don't know what's going on.
Still good?
All right, Hody, can you hear us now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, and you all can hear us as well. Okay.
I believe. Yes.
We figure it out now. Hody is just going to be in the background silently. Okay, Hody, give us a test.
Hello, hello, hello.
There we
Hello, hello. Joe. That is.
Joe says you guys are quieter than the LNC's endorsement of Chase. All right.
We're getting there.
Through the magic of editing, no one knows anything happened. All right, I don't even know where we were. So you were saying 2020 was embarrassing. Joe Bishop Hinchman just told us during the break that it was not embarrassing. What are you talking about?
I didn't say it was embarrassing. I said it was a little bit disastrous. And as somebody who sat in the crowd while we dithered an entire day of business away, and then several hours the next day deciding whether or not the online portion of the convention was binding
I remember
and true.
that part, yeah.
By the end of it, I wanted to bust out my best Bob Knight impression and throw a chair at. I believe my anger was directed at Ken Molman at the moment because he was the one bringing the
Not
motions.
Ken.
Poor kid.
Ken's a nice boy. Here's the
How
thing.
is that different than this year? This
Yeah. So
You did it a
let's
full
go.
day
Let's
away.
go reset. All right, I'm gonna regain control here. All right. So Luke Lomax, it was your first convention, and you felt the best part was seeing everybody in person and that many people. And the thing that I hear most from the conventions, you tell me if I'm wrong, Kristen, is wow, I don't feel alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
It absolutely was. There were some unifying moments. I mean, there were obviously some areas and some times where we were diametrically opposed foes, but for the most part, when it got down to brass tacks, we sat all the delegates from Michigan, we sat all the delegates from Washington, and when Aaron Starr got to the microphone and tried to create more shenanigans, I'm joining that caucus. I never joined the caucus, but I joined that one.
That caucus started in like 2012. the Aaron Starr caucus. That's an old caucus.
Don't let Aaron Starr near the microphone caucus.
Yeah.
So they changed the bylaws during conventions where we only needed like 2/3 majorities instead of 7/8 majorities. But when it would get down to it and we would do standing votes, we were unified on a lot of things. So there's always going to be people who are crazy. We're libertarians. You can't get away from that. But I think the majority of people are actually invested in getting the work done.
But I was telling Brian Nichols today, it's like, you have to understand, it's not just libertarians. It's literally every party. It's just the Republicans and Democrats have more money and more people, so you don't notice it as much. But if you're involved in local politics at the Republican or Democratic level, you see all the crazy people you're talking about. I always feel like libertarians put themselves down a little too much on that because I've seen the other two parties, and they're crazier. Let's start with Trump, okay? Because I think that's the top line thing. That's the thing that got most, like, if you were going to really talk to anybody, they'd say, didn't Trump speak at your convention? So we kind of set the table a little bit on the Mises Caucus stuff, who and what they are, in the previous episode about the Libertarian Party. You can go back and check that out. And by the way, if you're in chat, please leave a comment. We will take your question. Hody, you're just going to have to start talking. It's hard when everybody's in the room and you're not. So,
Okay.
But we talked a little bit with Hody and Reinhold about why Trump was coming to speak and the Mises Caucus. So I don't feel like we need to rehash a lot of that. What I want to know from you all is what it was like leading up to that. What was the conversation before Trump spoke? So when you get there, is that the thing that everybody was talking about, or was it other stuff?
There were certainly a few points during business where delegates got up to the mic to try to move to rescind the invitation and close that event before it could happen. And Angela shut each and every one of those down with
Angela McArdle, chair of the National Party, basically said, they gave me full power and I'm going to use it. You can't stop me. Very Palpatine-like.
Well, all of it's already set up and we're not going to visit that issue, which I'm sorry. As a delegate, you're quashing his rights to even be heard. We certainly dithered a lot more time on more frivolous things during the 3 days we were doing this.
Yes. What was the Luke? What was the talk like?
So, I mean, aside from the guy that tried to rescind the invitation and then got escorted out rather politely, that was, it was everybody was just excited about the attention that we were bringing. And that's what most of the people, whether they agreed with Trump or whether they thought Trump was a good candidate or a good president or not, everybody was excited that he was there because there were things like Secret Service setting up metal detectors, and the buzz was all around the room about how they shut down the escalators to that floor so that you couldn't go up and down the escalators because Trump was coming in through the same entrance.
Positive or negative?
A mix of both, but I would say the majority of it was unfortunately positive.
I really felt the energy around it all was much more negative, but that's mostly because I
Settle it.
I think it was divided. I think people were upset that it was Trump, but they were happy that we got the platform. And when we all walked into that room and the delegates were sat in the front of the room finally, because we had to push non-delegates back to the back of the room. And there's a thing about that really irritated me, but we all came together. We booed him. We said,
well, let's talk about that because it looked like Trump's campaign tried to stack the room.
I don't know if it was Trump's campaign, if these were tickets that were sold by, the LP on the side, and these were people that paid. But I do know that they were all given badges like ours, exactly like ours. They said, so-and-so has been deemed ungovernable. It looked exactly like a delegate badge. They just didn't have delegate buttons. They had the same Trump tickets as us. It was really hard to distinguish who was who, other than there were about 20 people behind us cheering and trying to push us out of the way so they could see their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. And there was about 80 people in the front of the room. I was sitting next to Chase Oliver and Mike Termont during the shenanigans. I was there when Mike and Angie stood up in protest and walked away after I believe it was about freeing Ross Ulbricht, because we know that he's never going to do that. And he stand up there and said that he's going to. So Angie and Mike stood up in solidarity and walked out on camera. And then even more chaos ensued where MAGA hat tried to come up and get into the delegate seating. Star Child, who is a very infamous libertarian, apparently. He's at all of the conventions. You will not miss him. Mm-hmm. He's a good human. I had a really lovely conversation with him. But he and the MAGA hat got into a scuffle over a chair. And that's when Chase and I decided, we're done. We're getting out of this situation. And we went and hung out in Lars Mapstead's room.
Was the Atmos, did you go to the speech?
I was not allowed in. I was denied entry.
Why?
I had my vape in my pocket, and they thought it was a bomb, I guess.
Okay. Did you go, Paul?
Spangle, I can't afford to be arrested in D.C. I chose the route of knowing myself and not getting arrested by the
You care too much. Let me just say that. You care too much. You care more than he does.
I stood on a chair and I booed loudly.
Yeah, so Donald Trump comes and speaks, and he gives a speech that I think was perfectly tailored to the Libertarian Convention. Like, if you were to read the text of that speech, it was all the reasons he would be a libertarian option for president. I felt his campaign did a good job in writing that speech. It didn't persuade me at all, because I was alive and paid attention. But it was really interesting to watch, because this was the first speech I've ever seen Donald Trump give. And I will give credit to Angela, even though she didn't mean it for this to go that way. She accidentally engineered the very first hostile speech Donald Trump has ever given. And I thought that was really interesting to watch on C-SPAN.
It was actually very interesting to watch. I didn't watch it on C-SPAN. I was actually watching a Twitter videographer, journalist, because that person was carrying the lead up to the event as well. So I was watching the people come in, watching all the non-delegates getting set up front, getting them pushed out. All that was on video. I was watching him watch all that. So it was really interesting to see. And then, of course, when he comes on and the boos were going on, as I had the advantage of watching it there, but also being on Twitter too, I could watch all the commentary. And there were people who were all the Trump MAGA people screaming and yelling about how horrible this is and how disrespectful and all of this.
Some of those people were also on the national committee, but we'll get to that.
There is that. But then also, the thing I noticed is as soon as that speech was over, most of the media packed up and walked out. And I watched, because this person covered the rest of it, I watched in Mike Tremont and Chase Oliver get up and Rectenwald. They gave up and they gave passionate, just anti-Trump speech.
Totally unaware that even happened.
It was so great.
I'm totally unaware that happened.
Well, why would we want to promote our candidates, Spangle?
Right.
It's our convention. It's here to cede to the Republicans.
I really feel like our episode Hody last time, where we talked about possible Republican infiltration, Trump infiltration of the party, it really felt naked watching that convention from afar.
Yeah, absolutely. Props to the delegates for making it not work out, because flat out, they got Scott Horton up there telling libertarians to shut up, be polite, don't yap during the speech. They got Dave Smith then right before it to say, shut up, be respectful, I think is the words he used. Listen, observe.
Please be nice. Please be nice to the candidate we got to come speak, because I ruined everything by not running. Please be nice to this guy who's a war criminal that I call a war criminal.
Right. These are the same people. These are the same happy holidays people. Hey, I don't have to respect nobody. Okay, now you've actually got a warmonger on your stage and
be ungovernable, and then the most governable is on your stage begging for votes.
Right. And the LNC, man, to their credit, like you said, it was naked. They tried. They sent 2 libertarian superheroes to tell people to shut up during the speech. They said the delegates were going to get the front row. That was a promise, right? Didn't happen. They promised the media was going to be required, if they wanted to cover the Trump convention, they were required to cover the libertarian candidates as well. Didn't happen. They promised that Trump was going to address all the libertarian problems, right?
They charged money for questions.
Didn't happen, right? So none of that ended up happening. Like the LNC either lied or got lied to. We're talking about Angela versus Trump, so I'll let everybody else decide who's the most trustworthy person in that category. That's a fun way to hash it out. But either way, it worked out as it should have for the Republicans, and all of it, props to the delegates, was sabotage, because they said, no, screw you, Dave Smith, screw you, Angela, screw you, Scott Horton. We're going to boo. We're going to let warmongers know what happens when you get on our stage.
They're ungovernable.
Yep.
Yeah, the comment here from Tom Modica is they told libertarians what to do. That doesn't you don't know your audience.
Well, I think also it was kind of impressive, going to the point about the delegates. It's kind of impressive that it seemed like Trump got on the defensive a little bit, like 3/4 of the way through.
No,
he making fun of us.
No, he defaulted to, if you've been a libertarian as long as I have at this point, when you argue, I spent most of my time arguing with Republicans, because I come from the Republican Party to the Libertarian Party, and I'm still friends with a lot of Republicans. When you make them mad with a point they can't refute, they default to, well, enjoy getting 3%,
right?
Which is what he did, which is how I knew that they actually got to him. The audience did, because he did that like 2 or 3 times.
What I want to say about that, though, is that that's a lot different than I remember from 10 years ago. Because before, we had Gary Johnson running, it was not 3%. It was enjoy getting less than 1%.
Right.
So now we've kind of upped that game.
Yeah.
When we got Gary Johnson in, and then Joe Jorgensen, and they were both above that 1% range. So
what's interesting to me is the time that I was in the Libertarian Party everyone was so hell-bent on being respectable and nice, and the people that came along and said that's not how you boldly message, then reverted to prags and started telling everyone to be nice and respectful. And I don't totally disagree. I would not have booed. I would have listened, or probably not gone. I wouldn't have made that choice. I'm just not that guy. But I got the sense that the booing was not for Trump as much as it was like a vocal middle finger to Angela for making this choice to begin with. What do you all think? Kristen?
Being in that room, it was for Trump.
Was it?
It was for Trump, and you could tell that immediately when his music started to play and he came out, and you know how he always does his little dance,
Yeah.
and he didn't. He absolutely didn't, and you could see the gears turning in his head. I've never been so close to him,
Mhm.
and I never want to be again. It was gross, but like you could see it. He was not going to walk.
He couldn't compute talking to an audience that didn't love him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was probably having a self-dialogue in the back of his head, like, I thought my team was supposed to stack this room full of my supporters.
Yeah.
Why are these people booing me right
You
now?
could tell he genuinely hated it. Chuck Moulton said, "Joke's on him. We'd love to get 3%."
And the other thing too is he did what 15, 20 minutes max.
Yeah, it was a short speech.
He goes out to these other ones. He's going for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
He wanted off that stage quick.
He went from orange to red, Joe Bishop Benjamin says. The Toasty Posty says the 3% line was gold. It got right under his skin. Joe also says, happens a lot. People are big and mean online, and when they actually confront someone in power, they turn into kitty cats, amateurs. Talking more about the leadership. I think if you're looking at it, Dave, Angela, Michael Heiss, some of these people get a lot of attention because they're at the top of that Twitter pyramid, right?
They're loud.
And they're loud, yeah. But like if you're looking at the convention makeup, like how would you break it down? Like how would you categorize people, right? Like, and I'm not just saying by caucus, but like if you were to describe the crowd ideologically, how do you think you break that down to me?
So just going over the numbers for myself afterwards, I would say it was about 50-50 for most things.
In terms of what?
Mises and
everyone else?
People that don't vote Mises, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was an even divide, but you've got it's obvious that there's people from the Republican Party that came to libertarianism. There's people from the Democratic Party that came to libertarianism, and then there's also people that have just always been libertarians and say, screw you to the government and I don't want any part of it. And those people had a voice too. So it's just like with the general election, nationwide is. You've got that middle 10% that is the deciding factor. And that's kind of what we saw play out because you have 300 on one side, 300 on the other side, and you've got 150 or so in the middle that they're the deciding votes. And it's who's caucusing with who and who's in the same region as whom and who's got partnerships and backroom deals and whatever. But
so it sounds absolutely identical to back in the day when I was part of the pragmatic takeover of 2012.
The more things change, the more they stay.
It's exactly the same. It's the radicals versus the pragmatics,
Yeah.
and then they morphed into the prags, and then Mises and all that.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, when we did nominations, we were all very unified that RFK and Donald Trump are not libertarian candidates.
Yeah.
Donald Trump got 6 write-in votes, and
Yeah.
RFK picked up a few because he actually got his signatures in to get our nomination, which I was 19 total votes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, at the very least, we know that we're all anti-war. We know that we're not going to fall for the same BS of the old parties. We're tired of that.
Yep.
Carol?
Yeah, I was surprised by the low Donald Trump numbers, the low RFK Jr. numbers, because I felt like watching the media leading up to it or the social media chatter around it, it felt like, man, there's a lot more people willing to vote for Trump and RFK than I thought. And that wasn't the case in the delegates.
I never thought it would be the case because
Hold on. Don't talk over a woman. Apologize to her.
I don't think that was ever the case. I never saw Donald Trump or RFK getting our nomination. I talked to a lot of libertarians one-on-one. I don't listen to the social media. We know that the media is going to spin things however they want, whatever's going to get them the most views. They're not going to tell the truth if they don't have to. But when you talk to real libertarians who've been in this party for 5, 10 years, 20 years, we know that we're not going to fall for establishment BS.
Would you say that a lot of people will say the Mises caucus as if it's a Borg?
Yeah.
Love Donald Trump, are going to vote for Donald Trump. How did that ring?
I would say that's inaccurate.
Okay.
I
Tell us more.
absolutely would. I hate the caucus wars. I hate people labeling the Mises Caucus under one giant umbrella of bigotry and hate, because there are people in the Mises Caucus that are bigots, that are hateful, who are part of, programs like Clint Russell. He's part of a really scary program that I had never heard of until the convention, and I was like, oh wow, definitely not getting my vote, aside from the fact that I'm running against him.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of good people in Indiana. We had, I think, probably 10 people in our delegation who identify as Mises or Mises adjacent, and they voted their principles. They did also do the right thing, and they did not NOTA Chase Oliver, even though they disagreed with him. We had 2 abstentions in our delegation because they know that the party is more important than anything else.
And I would argue that the NOTA vote, and we'll get to the presidential race here in a second, but I would argue the NOTA vote seemed from afar to be more about an anti-Mike Termott sentiment and his deal with Chase than even it was like a vote against Chase.
It did
how did
seem
that?
like people were maybe a little upset that principles got. It's the game of politics.
It's a convention, and
Yeah.
people who've never been to a convention were surprised that convention activities happen. But you shook your head that no, it was more about no, never Chase. I'm voting for no ballot access in 30 places, 30 states.
Well, so, and I think Reinhold can speak to this a bit more, but there was a plan by the Mises organizers to NOTA immediately amend the bylaws so that they could take another bite at the apple and try to elevate Clint Russell from vice chair candidate to presidential candidate.
Vice presidential. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that was the plan. I was told that by one of the Mises higher ups.
But I was also
They were
shaken.
proud of it.
No, but
Also,
I
there was dissension within that caucus. And
Yeah,
those in there.
No, because they were told to vote no, and there was a lot of people who didn't.
Mhm.
So I mean that was good, but there was still 300 who did, and we'll get into that later. But yeah.
yeah, but so you couldn't. Yeah, all right. Move. So let's finish up on Trump. Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Well, if
Go
we're
ahead.
gonna finish up on Trump, I
No,
was going to.
go ahead.
All right.
All right, finish.
So I wanted to rebut this. I look at the caucuses the same way I look at the police. If you are fine sitting in a chair aligned in a caucus with a bigot and a racist on either side of you, then you are a bigot and or a racist. I don't care. We should be holding cops to the same standards of, some good cops? Well, why aren't they doing anything about the bad cops? If there are some good Mises Caucus members, why the hell aren't they doing something and elevating the standards amongst their own caucus goers?
I would agree with that. I would love to see the good people in the Mises Caucus come out and speak against the people who are hateful and bigoted, because they're not all. I mean, you can have your own personal views, and as long as we all agree,
How would you all?
libertarians.
Well, let me ask you that. How would you define hateful and bigoted, Kristen? When you guys say
When
stuff
you
like that,
send an email that says, "I'll never vote for your faggot ass," you're a bigot.
just calling Chase a groomer without.
Without knowing. I mean, I've sat down and talked to the man several times. I know him personally. We still talk,
You were willing to stake your reputation on being his running mate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So we'll talk to Chase. So let's finish up on Trump.
Right.
There was a lot. Hold on. There's a lot of argument about the decorum. Any regrets on booing? You said you stood up on a chair and booed.
No regrets. I'll never have a regret booing that man. He destroyed this country. He locked us down. He raised our debt. He deserves nothing but boos.
Okay. What was the conversation about Trump after that? Or did everybody just move on?
We just moved on, really. The presser was so good. What presser? So after Trump, Rechtenwald, Termott, and Oliver all were able to get up and give a rebuttal. Originally, the LNC had said that the top winner of the straw poll would give a 5-minute rebuttal. They decided at the last minute, because Chase won the straw poll, as I've heard, that they chose the top 3 candidates, Termott, Rechtenwald, and Oliver. Rechtenwald may have ingested a mushroom gummy before he stood on stage.
Some candidates were more able to stand than others.
Rechtenwald left the
Okay,
stage.
explain this to me. What happened? Because he's admitted it, so it's not allegedly.
No.
Like he said, he apologized for it. But Michael Rechtenwald was kind of. There were 2 Mises Caucus candidates. There was Joshua Smith and Michael Rechtenwald, and they kind of split the vote, which is why I always thought Chase would probably carry the day, or Lars, someone who was self-financing to a great degree. self-funding with a lot of money.
All Chase's is grassroots.
Usually, well, he's been working hard for 2 years on it and going to a lot of places. And in conventions, it's what you see on Twitter now about the conversation around the candidate. It never, it's the same with Joe. It never reflects what happens at a convention. So I just discount the opinions of people who don't know how a convention works. Joe won the nomination because Joe was everybody's second choice. And that's how it works at a convention. And the more delegates you get to show up to a convention, the better you're going to do. Mises caucus was kind of, there was some momentum slowing for them moving into this convention. And obviously, I don't fault Dave Smith for not running at all. It's a thankless position. No one should run for president of the LP ticket. You will never get a thank you. You will never get anything but grief and scorn. And it is not worth losing a dime of your income, a shred of relationships with your wife, children, or anyone else in your life because it's so thankless. So I will never fault him for putting his family first at all. But when he admits this now, when he decided to not run, it left a vacuum. And Angela, I had not heard this before until yesterday's live stream of Angela. Amash decided not to run this year because Dave Smith had declared that he was going to and had told Amash that he would. Imagine if Justin Amash was the nominee today. I mean, you wouldn't have had unity, but when you take somebody like me and Brian Nichols, who are like, I think we've all sorted into two strains of libertarian, kind of anti-state libertarians, more orthodox in the vein that I am, and then maybe people who are more anti-left libertarian. And they are anti-state, but they prioritize the culture wars and being anti-left more than they might the state. And eventually you have to watch yourself before you end up becoming a pro-state because it hurts the left. But Brian Nichols and I were talking yesterday, and it's like, yeah, if Amash, it'd be a no-brainer for us. Like, if it's Michael Rechtenwald, I'm going to go, no, he's a joke. I'll hold my nose. It's Chase. Okay. I'm not going to vote for, Dave declared too early and didn't have his ducks in a row, which is just a huge sign of inexperience, which is exactly what I said to you on your show. Go and listen to the episode. You didn't humiliate me. I had a lot of valid points, and you made all the errors I warned you against. But pride goeth before the fall.
I would also say that the same thing could have been said for Spike, because from what I understand, Spike also decided not to run for president this year because Dave had said he was going to, and
Spike also sat it out, and Spike would have also been a unity candidate.
Absolutely.
Imagine if it was a Mosh Spike this year.
Oh my God.
How many more percentage? I mean, it'd be 5-10% maybe.
No.
Joe Bishop Henchman, a longtime person, the mean, nasty candidate, has never won the presidential nomination, but someone tries that strategy every 4 years, and Joe's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because like Joe, like me, there are a lot of candidates who are delegates who go to the convention. He and I don't think Joe went this year, but I didn't. But people who have gone for a long time, they're always yearning for Harry Brown to return. And
Jacob Hornberger, basically.
Jacob was the mean, nasty candidate 4 years ago.
Well,
and he tried it
was
again this
too.
year. Yeah, he's kind of a dick. And that never works out. And, I don't think Rechtenwald was nasty at all. But he just never could get it together, right? And Joshua Smith has too much personal bad blood, I think, within his own caucus. Yeah. Jacob Hornberger was a nothing burger. And so that kind of, Lars, Mike Termott, I don't know that they were all that inspiring. And then you've got Chase going to all these conventions, whipping delegates. Eventually that math leads you to go, well, maybe he's everybody's second choice. Mm-hmm. And so he's going to come in fairly strong. And he did. How many ballots were there until Chase got nominated? 7. I can't remember, Reinhold. Hody, maybe you know.
It was 5 for Joe, I believe.
5, okay. I mean, I think it was 2 for Gary.
Yeah,
with Austin Peterson.
Yeah, they said that they weren't going to give him the first ballot. That's the only reason Gary took second, I think.
Yeah, it was literally like, you're a Republican. We've got to make you earn it a little.
And there's a little drama why it took 7 instead of 6, because it should have been 6 ballots, but there was I think Chase missed it by 4 votes, because in the middle of the voting, that's when the announcement came that Mike Tremont would join with Chase.
Yeah, so take this, and Hody, you weigh in too, because I bet you know a lot of the story. One of the controversies is Mike Tremont was this guy who was running for president, and he gets eliminated. And this happens a lot. There's in most of the conventions I went to, there was a unity candidate. The only one where there wasn't a unity situation where it was with Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. And Gary Johnson told the delegates, I will not run if Bill Weld's not my nominee. And everybody wanted Austin Peter to slot in and be the vice presidential candidate. And he said, I absolutely refuse the nomination if that's the case. That's normally not the case. Normally it's a Spike slots it. I think Spike actually ran for VP maybe, but as part of a ticket. But that in and of itself was like a unity thing. Like, all right, well, we'll have Joe, but then we'll give your team the vice presidency. So this group of delegates will be happy. So you'll vote for our candidate to get them over the top to 50% plus one vote. So Mike Tremont drops out and cuts a deal with Chase. And then somehow Michael Heiss is mad.
So,
what explain the situation to me, Michael?
Well, there's two stories going, because then we've got the original story that was passed around by the Mises Caucus, but then there's somebody else who has written the story that says that's not exactly what happened, and here's what happened. So I don't know which one is exactly what happened, but basically once this deal came through, Michael Heiss had talked to Mike Tremont about possibly coming over and being VP as well, and Michael says he made the deal. I don't think he did. I don't think Mike Tremont did, because there's a little too much stuff going on there, and there's a lot of stuff I've heard that I don't know if I can get into, but to keep this short. But
when is that going to start?
keeping it short,
Yeah,
anytime. We're running out of fluids here pretty soon. So
we need an IV.
so when the announcement was made, and the way Mike made the announcement was saying that I tried working with this caucus 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, this weekend. I've never been able to get working with them, so I am going to throw my hat behind Chase. And the story I heard was that there was talk about trying to do like a unity thing that people would, whoever won, the other person would support them, and it would be a thing. And Michael Heiss refused, whereas Chase said he would. Right. So that's kind of the other thing that happened. But so Michael felt like he had made the deal with Mike Tremont, and then this happened in front of him. So he ran to the mic to say, hey, no, we've offered it to him. So, because he was afraid it was going to change the voting, which, because it came in the middle of voting, then there was a call for people to say, can we get our ballots back? Because we would change our vote to Chase. We were going to vote for, abstaining or NOTA or whatever. And the decision was made and voted on. The chair decided no, that they couldn't, which is probably the right call anyway. So he ended up losing by 4 votes, getting over 50%. Right. So because he didn't get over 50%, he missed by 4 votes, they eliminated Rectenwald and had to go through Chase versus NOTA one time.
Hody, anything to add to that?
No, not really. Termont, I just want to say I am shocked by this because he is very Mises. This is a guy who went on Vosh and stood up for the Mises caucus, and was like, when Vosh was like, well, these guys are bigots, right? And he was like, I've never heard this before. It was actually kind of embarrassing, but even Dan Smots, who is very Mises, was like, ooh, shouldn't have showed up to that interview. But he'll defend him at all costs. I remember I sat in on a radical caucus thing, and when pro-trans stuff came up, he was like, nope, get it out of here. He was the leading voice kind of against that. My guess is, and I'm just theorizing here, Kristen's going to have a much better perspective on this one than me, but my guess is that he just got to know Chase / got to know Heiss during the campaign and frankly trust one over the other. The 3 who were generally campaigning together when you saw the happy pictures and here we are were Lars, Chase, and Termont. And so my guess is that they got close, they learned about each other, and I'm hoping that Chase genuinely just won him over as opposed to him just being a sneaky snake cop. But I don't know, really.
One thing you have to know about the Libertarian Party and the delegates specifically is every delegate thinks they're a mover and a shaker because in their home party they are. They're the party. Luke is like a whole county party. So they expect to be personally asked to vote for them. Like, I'm not saying this about Luke, but I'll use Luke as an example. Luke expects Mike Tremont to walk up and shake his hand and say, "Will you vote for me?" And the candidate that does that first and does that most agreeably will probably have Luke's vote, because there's enough agreement between these different candidates that run for president, especially in this year and the last year in 2020, where there's a whole slate of people and there's not a lot of daylight between their agreements. Like, if it were Chase versus Dave Smith, like, that would be culture war versus, like, I don't know, right? Culture war light. I don't know. It would be probably a little bit different, but like this group of people, like, I don't know what Michael Rectenwald was really about. He was just sort of doing it because he got asked nicely. But like Tremont, Lars, Chase, is there a huge amount of disagreement? So really at that point, it comes down to personal associations and whether or not they talked to you and came to your county party, and are they promising to come volunteer in your state and campaign there, and did they give you a button, and what campaign has the best materials, and do they look organized? And those are the things that matter to delegates that vote.
Yeah.
So what I'll say is, if you go clearly by those standards, I would have been more willing to vote for Lars, probably because he put so much of his money and his personal wealth into it. And he had a really good plan. The Stop 270 thing that Lars came up with was a really good plan. Stop either candidate from getting 270 electoral votes. He has connections in Maine. He helped get ballot access in Maine, so he thought he could do that with Maine. So I liked that. But the thing that really turned me off, and the way that I voted as a libertarian, the most libertarian person in the room, by the way, the way that I voted, and the reason I voted the way I did, is because Chase was the only one that said he would still support whoever else won or whoever else was the nominee, regardless of what their positions were. And he had the receipts to back it up, because he was at the convention in Reno in 2022 when Macy's took over. And he still went to Georgia and fought like hell and got ballot access for 3 different states and campaigned his butt off for 2 years to be the presidential nominee. So he followed up what he talked about. And Lars told us at our Indiana convention he would probably not be as involved in a campaign for somebody else. And I have a huge problem with that. Just like I have a huge problem with Rectenwald and Hornberger not showing up to our state convention. Yeah. I know that that's pretty self-important of me, but Indiana is the best affiliated state in the Libertarian National Party, and
the gold standard.
Yes, we are the gold standard. And the fact that we didn't garner enough respect from 2 of the candidates because they thought that they would be received, negatively or poorly, like that, it almost hurts my feelings.
And so I think Twitter libertarians, you need to listen to this, because the way that a Libertarian Party delegate makes a decision is not about ideology. It is about the functions of the party, Kristen. You are the vice chair of the state of Indiana's Libertarian Party. Mm-hmm. You care about the growth of the party.
Absolutely.
And you see the presidential nomination as the chief marketing officer of the party for the only time your friends and family are going to care.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the things he just talked about are way more important than a stance on whatever Ben Shapiro is talking about that day. Like, that's not as important to a delegate.
As far as what Ben Shapiro is talking about, yeah, I'd say that's not really very important to libertarian delegates. But so the libertarian candidates, they are so ideologically similar. In the Fed, taxation is theft. We have our points. What sold me on Chase was I went to Ohio for the regional conference in 2023, and Chase and Mike Tremont were both there. And Chase said, I will storm the debate stage. If they try to keep me out, I will get arrested for our right to be represented. And I was like, okay, that's radical enough for me, while also still being pragmatic and libertarian. I liked Lars before the Chase's team reached out to me. I wanted a Lars Oliver ticket. I wanted Oliver for president, and I wanted Lars to be his vice president. And I thought that would have been an amazing ticket. I thought that they worked well together. But what it came down to, in my opinion, was that presser. when Rechtenwald stumbled off the stage and left Chase and Mike up there by themselves, and they started volleying these questions, and it was beautiful. It was symbiotic, and I'm not gonna lie, even at that point, still being the presumptive vice presidential pick for Chase, I saw the writing on the wall. They work together very well. They're like brothers, and their personalities are so different enough that they can, as a combined ticket, represent as many people in the party as possible. Whereas Chase and I combined would have represented the mass millennial and Gen Z population, and I think that Mike and Chase will do wonderful things in November, as long as Mike can bring it. He's got to get that energy up a little bit so he can reach those younger people.
I have to agree that presser was actually very impressive once
Reck fell
kind
off.
of walked away.
The Ronald Rump roast.
They were literally bounced like it was a tag team, bouncing back and forth. And one point was saying somebody asked a question and Chase answered it really great, a lot of energy, and the mic comes up and says, "And I agree with him too." And
He said, "I couldn't have said it better."
It was they were asking about about Trump or something like that, and he's like, "No, we both don't like Trump. We both And he came up and said, "I agree with him. He could have said it better." And that's what happens when you come and look at this. As libertarians, we will fight between ourselves about little things, but if you come after us as a group, we're going to be united as a front. And that the way he spoke, the way they both spoke with that much energy was awesome, and it just galls me that hardly anybody was watching it.
Yeah, I'm super mad C-SPAN left before that.
Yeah, so just to go to a couple comments. Chuck Moulton, longtime libertarian, says it is pretty common for presidential candidates to get to know each other and like each other over a campaign, traveling to lots of state conventions. And that happens on the campaign trail in other races too. Like when I was managing gubernatorial races, you'd hang out at the debates and you'd go, well, they're not that bad. Joe Bishop Hinchman says, I'll always remember sitting at a state convention doing work on my laptop or something. Joe's the former chair of the LNC. Watching as a delegate was pitched by each of the three candidates for state chair. The delegate said the same thing to each one. I'm sorry, I'm voting for your opponent. One candidate said, well, he's terrible. Here's why. One candidate says, you're dumb. I hate you. The third said, I respect that and thank you for your work for the party. I talked to her after, and she was actually undecided because of that.
You treat your delegates with respect and like real people instead of like a dollar that you have to, spirit away into your pockets.
I have to say, the thing that damaged Lars's prospects with me the most was the fact that, and I spoke to Larry in front of the table, and both of them said essentially, we're probably not going to be as keen as supporting. And Larry was outright in saying that he wouldn't accept the nomination as vice president should somebody other than Lars win. And that's a deal breaker for me.
Well, Larry doesn't need to do it.
Right.
I understand that, but it's a matter of
Principle.
It's a matter of being a team player when I'm trying to build a party, as opposed to it honestly, and I'm not going to say that this is their motivation on either case, but it feels like you're in it for me. I'm running for myself and my ego.
Yeah.
My name ID,
That was
my future.
That was the feeling that I got. I was so offended for you when Larry came over and started talking to our delegation. Larry Sharp, by the way, for those of you that don't know, the podcast host, radio host, whatever, guy in New York. Larry came over and started talking to our 39 delegates while Kristen was still a presumptive nominee for vice president for Chase about how we should all change our votes from Chase to Lars so that Larry could be the vice president. And he was doing it right in front of Kristen. The blatant disrespect. It was
That's
like,
arrogant.
oh my gosh.
And I'm vice chair of the delegation at that point. And
Right.
Evan was away, so I have to control the situation, and I let Larry go on. I let him do his pitch.
Right.
Because as you should. He
Was it
does,
just
yeah.
like hubris?
But then I said,
That's-
Larry,
Okay.
leave Indiana, when he had said 15 times. I counted it 15 times. Chase can't win.
Chase can't win.
I was like,
None of them can win.
yeah.
It's a marketing operation.
I really feel like Chase and I could have won. I do.
I agree with you.
But yeah, no, it's off-putting. It's not good for the party.
Oh
And
God, I love pudding.
Is it dinner?
I'm not off-putting yet.
Lee Jared Evans says Dave Smith for president. Almost. He also says very cool that Chase Oliver is against the genocide in the Middle East. And he said you can't be a libertarian and be okay with the genocide in Palestine. I don't know what he's talking about. But anybody want to translate that for me?
The war that Israel's fighting in Gaza right
I
now.
get that part, but is Chase like pro one side or the other? Is that
He
what?
No,
is
he's-
just pro anti interventionism, just like any
Okay.
libertarian should be.
He
Gotcha.
says we should not spend our money to support the Israeli regime. They should be taking care of their own business, and they should be doing it more responsibility.
Yeah,
more responsibly.
Austin Peterson asked me to come on his show. Thanks, Reinhold. And I said, look, I'll come on and talk about the future of the LP, but like I don't know anything about Chase other than the interview I did with him in 2023. So you should just have him on. Let's talk about the Lee says Chase is anti-war. How hard is that to understand? Well, look, I'm busy. I have been up since 4:30 this morning. It's 7:40 in the evening, and I have been working every moment since, and I'm tired. Hody, how would you describe the reaction online to the nomination of Chase Oliver?
99.9% positive, unless you're in a libertarian circle, and then it was about 50-50.
Okay.
So this is one of those things where libertarians need to realize the size of the pond that we are playing in. The world is very excited about Chase Oliver. This is somebody who I think not only is going to rack up actual percentage points, which, by the way, like, I mean, Mises meetings, they were even talking about, like, even with Rechtenwald, we're not going to hit a full percent because Kennedy's running, Trump's running. This is a guy who's actually not only going to give you the full percentage point, but actually make people who are starving for options. I mean, you could view this on TikTok, on Instagram, even on Twitter, if you're not insulated into only your little echo chamber, that people were extremely excited to have an option who is both not bigoted and also not terrible on finances and terrible on war. Like, this is something that people are hungry for, starving for. That video of Chase saying, what the guy interviewed him being like, gun to your head, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and Chase saying the gun would go off in 1 week, 40 million views. It's been, and that's not even the most impressive statistic. Like,
well, and you
it's
think
been
for a
bookmarked
party
and-
leadership that cares a lot about social media views that they would have reposted?
This is the top video on TikTok for like the last week. I mean, it's unreal, right? Like the how many people are like, I'm interested in this. If do yourself a favor and go to comments if you use TikTok at all, and look at how many new non-libertarian looking people are just being like, and it's TikTok, right? So they're like, oh my gosh, this is so lit. Oh, I feel it in my bones, fam. Oh my goodness, like more of this energy, right? So they might not talk like you libertarians that are used to hearing like long lectures, but this is a new group of people that is very excited about it. So I just want to say, like, overwhelming excitement. This is right up there with the anti-racist quote from Joe Jorgensen, which again, our biggest boost in donations and eyes on our campaign and shares and every metric at all. It was the best tweet of her entire campaign. It was the best month, week, day of our entire campaign. She didn't do it again because she catered to the 50% or the 51%, 49%, whatever of your own base that just goes, no, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm going to make it one last point and then I will be done. If you are making a new restaurant, people who watch restaurants like get turned around, the biggest issue they have is they want to cater to their base. And they just say, these are my customers. They've named the roaches in here. I can't just force them out by getting rid of the roaches. You know, they love the roaches. They love overdone cheeseburgers. If I change the cheeseburgers, they're going to leave. Yeah, you're going to lose some people who are probably going to vote for Trump anyway. Oh no, boo-hoo, lots of tears. Look what we stand to gain. I'm actually really excited about it, and the world is kind of really excited about it. The media has been extremely positive outside of your favorite podcaster.
Well, if you I don't remember what I was going to say. Let's go to the comments. Joe, nomination success of Larry's running mates from 2016, 2020, and 2024. Kristen, 0%. Success of Kristen's running mates, 100%. So you're up on Larry already. Yeah. Galt says, layoff Spangle. During the convention, he interviewed 17 IndyCar drivers, then produced, recorded, edited, and posted all of this in a single day. That's right. I was busy doing important things. Lee Jared Evans says, Mises F this up. I blame Dave Smith. Chase Oliver is fine, but Dave Smith would have been better.
Well, he's had plenty of shots. I think about 12 shots to get this right.
Okay.
And
All right, let's calm down. I would say that, yeah, the funny thing is, I mean, Dave is obviously a gifted communicator and would have he does a good job on Joe Rogan and these other places communicating it. You told me, Luke, there are a lot of people at this convention that are there because of him. When you look back at the history of recent libertarian candidates and their ability to message libertarianism and a pure libertarianism, I would not put Joe at the top of that list.
Nope.
As much as I loved Gary Johnson, he was a pragmatic choice and was not at the top of that list. Bob Barr, not at the top of that list. I don't know who was before Bob Barr, who was 04. But Narek, definitely not at the top of that list. Rest in peace. Great writer, great constitutional teacher, not a great libertarian hope, right? So then let's go back to 2000. Is that the Harry Brown?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the last great, pure, homegrown Libertarian Party candidate that was great at messaging libertarianism. And Chase Oliver's probably, I mean, if you really look at the people who really care about messaging and it being hardcore, like I'm going to put a gun to my head and pull the trigger and I'm going to run up on stage and let's be radical. Chase Oliver's the most bold messenger that the party has had in a long time. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk about I agree about Joe Jorgensen. Gary Johnson was great, Lee says. Chase is the best LP messenger we've had since Harry Brown, hands down, from the comments. Libertarian JRT also says, I have faith Chase will energize non-libertarians to vote LP. Once you do it for the first time, it's really easy to pull that lever again. Kristen, I think one thing that the current leadership of the Libertarian Party doesn't understand, and a lot of anti-left libertarians don't understand, is that you're not running a political party for your own personal preferences. You are running to bring in the broadest coalition of voters that you possibly can.
You run this party so that people have a safe space, so that people feel represented.
I'm triggered. What do you mean a safe space?
The biggest tent possible.
The biggest tent possible. You know, I was a Democrat before I was a Libertarian, and I left the Democratic Party because they became really pro-war and, you know, several other things. And I'm so happy to have a home because, you know, taxation without representation is the highest form of theft. If I'm not represented by the Republicans and the Democrats, where do I go? My job is to grow this party. Period. I've never done anything for personal gain. I make so much money doing this. I just got a raise, triple my salary.
Nice.
Yeah, it's still zero because that's the point. You shouldn't be out here doing it for your own good, your own money. You're out here building something for the community. Millennials don't vote. We're apathetic. Gen Z is like, this shit's crazy. Pardon my French. Like, I don't want to vote. People don't want to talk about politics because they don't feel it's so divisive. I think that the Libertarian Party is here to unite all the people in America under the agreement that we don't want to have a boot on our neck.
Or a head.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to pick on Lee because I think he's indicative of a lot of what I see. And Hody, I'm going to ask you to field this, okay? And then you guys can weigh in. Paul, you can't because you're not productive or helpful in this area. You're not interested in persuading people. You're interested in being angry at them.
only sometimes.
I'm right, aren't I, Reinhold? Even Reinhold's disappointed in you, and no one looks down on right-wing libertarians more than this man.
J. Populist.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
I said populist, not libertarian.
Populist, okay. So Lee says, we don't really need a woke presidential candidate that's okay with giving children hormone blockers. Total insanity. And Hody, the argument that I see most, so I think if you're an anti-left libertarian, you're going to look at a lot of his, you're looking at a lot of extracted quotes, right? I said to a friend who was like, I'm not voting for him because of these points. And I said, okay, in that hour interview, where are the points of agreement that you had with Chase? Because when I interviewed him back in 2023 at the beginning of his campaign, he didn't talk about it. I mean, maybe he knew that I'm more of a right-leaning Christian conservative libertarian, so he didn't lead with things that he knew would turn me off. But I never got the sense that like puberty blockers was at the center of Chase Oliver's campaign. I mean, is that like his big push on the stage? I mean, like I said, I've not followed his campaign, but as I'm watching my Twitter feed of libertarians, Chase is only going to talk about LGBT issues.
Oh no, Chase actually never hardly even brings up LGBT
Nope.
issues. They bring it up to him, and he's forced to respond to that. He's working on pivoting back, but Chase is an evangelical. Chase goes to church every Sunday. Chase is very, very pro-life. He is not this drag queen, flamboyant person that you would think. I mean, he is. He can be. Everybody's, faceted, but.
Right.
But no, Chase is he came to the Libertarian Party as anti-war. He's anti-state. He would just love to spread peace, love, and liberty, which he stole from me in my campaign in 22. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that like your live, laugh, love?
It is my live, laugh, love, because you can do it in emojis. So,
Hody, what do you, are you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Hody, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, tough love time. If you're a single issue voter, politics is rough, right? Like you have your candidate set for you. And if this is your big issue, you have a guy who did nothing about it while he was in office, but he's at least sharing your values vocally, and so you've got your guy. Probably nobody else is on your side. I want you to vote for Chase because of a myriad of things, and I can try to change your mind on this issue. Of course, like my hope is that we will reach out to some of these disaffected right-wing libertarians and be like, hey, listen, I understand why you're concerned about it. I love these kids. Maybe, I've interviewed somebody who went through a transition, who regrets it, who felt pressured into it, who did not get the screening they should have gotten from doctors. These people do not deserve to be dismissed. And unfortunately, left libertarians own this. You need to own this. Do not dismiss these people's experiences. They are real. They exist. Do not dare say, oh, that's just right-wing conservative media conspiracy, whatever, have it. They exist. You can talk to them. They are available to speak to, right? At the same time, talk to somebody else who was denied the blockers, who has committed self-harm, who regrets it for the rest of their lives, who is stuck because they were permitted or not permitted based on a government overlord or an authoritarian overlord. What we need is more conversation about this. I worked at a hospital. 99% plus of the abortions that we did, while I'm doing IVs, EKGs, and I'm watching every one of these patients, if they had one person in their life who would not judge them or hate them for the decision that they were going to make, it would immediately pull out and just say, I have somebody who would support me.
60% of abortions are by evangelical girls who don't think their family's going to support them.
Right. And so they are scared of the judgment. They're scared of your wrath. And this is a self-fulfilling prophecy for the pro-right, the pro-life Christians, is that you drive these people underground to hospitals, to places where they're scared of you, as opposed to being like, I'm pregnant, I'm worried, instead of having you be an open voice, be like, hey, we're going to get through this. I love life. I consider myself pro-life as well, as so does Chase, like on a personal level. I consider it a tragedy when these things happen. Not only did I deal with the women going through this in these clinics, but I dealt with them in our psych ward as well. The regret, the stinging difficulty that they had when they made these decisions in shame, in darkness, because there wasn't a willingness to have that conversation in the light. Chase is against getting government involved with it. If that is a libertarian to you,
to me, if you're running for president, then why have a position on it? And if your position probably should be, it's a state and local issue. Like, Lee brings up tattoos. Should someone under 18 be able to get a tattoo? Like, that's up to a local municipality to decide, or a state government in the constitutional system. It's not up to the president. I would never ask Chase about that. I do think the vast majority of the country agrees with Lee here. Like, I don't think you should be able to transition unless you're under 18. But I also would retort, like, over 18. Thank you. But like, this is an issue on Twitter. This is not an issue to people who are not able to pay rent right now because of inflation. It is not an issue to people. So that's where I look at it and go, the people who are pro-Trump libertarians are just beating him up, trying to drive down his stock because they want to demoralize you and not supporting him.
So let me push back just a little bit though, Chris, because this is somebody's whole life we're talking about. It may be few, but as a party that wants individualism and rejects collectivism, we say your life matters. Your life matters. And so if we say, yeah, we're banning something, but what, it's 2% of the people, 1%, whatever, some insignificant percent, that's somebody's loved one. That's somebody who I care about. That's somebody's friend or family member.
Welcome
and
to majoritarianism.
Right. Let me throw in something.
You're running for president.
Let me throw in something I think we'll all agree on. Intersex children should be allowed to take this. Nobody disagrees with this, right? Their body suddenly tries to transition in a different way than what they identify as. This is intersex people have been very put upon by the government because they just look at which of their genitals is bigger from birth and lop off the one that's smaller, right? Not the way it should work at all. We are slowly changing this. This was policy for this kind of still is policy in some states, right? So these people, intersex, more likely to be intersex than you are to be redheaded. So please consider this is not a small insignificant group. Now, why do I bring up intersex people? Because anti-trans legislation will prevent intersex people in all of these states from receiving that care that they need. This is collateral damage. 2% of your population that is going to transition incorrectly, that all of us recognize deserves it, will be hurt by anti-GSM legislation. This is what I want to stress to my friend Lee here. When you hand it over to the government, you don't get to say do it and do it right. You only get to say do it. When you say, please use your authority, use your power to stop this from happening, they'll go, okay, but they won't tell you how. You don't get to decide to have them do something ethically. Look at our rape kits that stack up. Look at our police system. Look at the immigration system. We all want it to be run the right way, but you gave it to politicians. They're not going to do it the right way. They're going to do it their way. So they will harm other people that are I would say it's harming the people that Lee wants to harm. Right?
No, no. Hold on. I'm going to stick up for Lee. That's not what Lee was saying.
Sure.
Lee's in the comments please let me on. Let me defend myself.
Sure.
All right. So we don't know what Lee thinks, and we're not picking on Lee. All right. So he's, he says he's militantly pro-choice.
Sure.
You just have to. He's saying you have to have a position on this stuff. It's a national issue, despite the legalities. Your regular everyday voter doesn't care about state versus local.
Sure.
I don't give a damn. You're running for president. You should stick to the top 5 issues, and this is not one of the top 5 issues. If you want to speak to what Twitter is talking about, then get a podcast. But if you're running for president and you want to build a broad coalition, then you should talk about the economy, and then the economy, and then the economy, and then the economy, and then anti-war.
And that's what Chase has been doing.
That's strategy.
And what Chase has always done is he's always said, I'm against government being involved, government having the say. And it's where do we think it's a good idea for government to come in and tell a child and her parents and their doctor what they should do? I mean, they're making up a decision, and they're usually making up a decision because
I don't want to get into this because I don't agree with you, but this is a gotcha issue by Status on the right, not a serious critique of Chase. It is rage clickbait.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty much.
I do think we can all agree on that. Yeah, I mean, we could get into trans debates and what people can do with their body, but if your position as the Libertarian presidential candidate is the state should not be involved, that's a pretty universally broad answer that everybody can kind of go, all right.
So you open a door for people to come and say, oh, we think it's right for your kids to have vaccines.
Exactly.
We're going to force vaccines on you. Well, you just give them the right to do that.
Right. Kara says Chase isn't the one bringing up the puberty blockers 24/7. Natalie says more and more voters are understanding you can have different beliefs, but no government shouldn't be involved. Exactly.
That is hitting the nail on the head.
Culturally, in this room, we can all agree on that, even if we hold different positions on what we would do.
That's right. Even people not in this party, Gen Z, Danny Lindy's kid, Jay, he said Chase's message is really resonating with people who just feel like, I do not want to vote the exact same ticket that I voted 4 years ago.
And I think if you are looking at it from a purely pragmatic point of building a broad coalition of voters, even if you are one of these anti-LGBT guys, the culture's against you, and that's what you're wailing against. why wouldn't you want to open the door to as many of those people with a candidate that may not agree with you on these issues, but does speak to the culture and introduces them to anti-war stances and end the Fed and other issues that you care about? Why wouldn't you find common ground and work towards, okay, we're going to set aside some of these issues and we can have those debates, but okay, let's talk to people like Gen Z youth. Why?
Those are libertarians.
No.
Because we're contrarians.
These
we fight.
A lot of these
fight,
guys are. There's a very real pipeline. I've watched it because guys that I came into the party with back in the Ron Paul Revolution, Ron Paul Republican to Libertarian Party to anti-Libertarian Party to like Hapa to Orthodox Christian to all of a sudden I'm a Nazi. There's like a weird like pipeline that has gone on that has made people more conservative in a very anti-liberal way. And I don't think that it's just as easy as like we're libertarians would have disagreeable personalities. I think a lot of these guys have evolved to become more conservative and have been formed by people who are not necessarily healthy or liberal or thoughtful. And because people who are attracted to Ron Paul in the 2000s are like me, like are attracted to a little bit of extremism. Right? Like I'm always going to be a little deviated from the norm in terms of politics.
A little dusting of Killdozer.
Right. It's Killdozer Day, and we all celebrate in this room to varying degrees. There's always going to be that spark in every libertarian soul of outrageousness. And so I think for a lot of these guys, because the culture in the last 20 years has flipped from going to a pride parade is countercultural to not going to the pride parade and saying it sucks is countercultural, right? Like, I think that countercultural,
the rebellion,
the rebellion of it, the what's the T word, the trans, that I can never think of it right off the top of my head. Transgressive is the word I'm looking for, where it's like, I'm going to find the norm that you like and then fight against it, right? I think that really speaks to a lot of folks. Let's get a couple more comments here before we start to wrap up. We got to talk about the chair and the chair's race real quick. Lee says, I'm fine with the government regulations. I'm not a libertarian. We need some regulations. Respect all your viewpoints, though. Very well said by everyone. Keep it up. Joe says, top issues universally are economy, inflation, jobs. Ours also add immigration, corruption. These also add healthcare, climate, environment. This is a wedge issue invented in DC to prop up ours. Kara says, the Chase campaign and states haven't been able to keep up with all the people contacting because they're so excited about his run. It's younger people in real life, not bots on Twitter. Kara's a former staffer for the LP.
She's the political director.
Natalie says, Chase appeals to millennials, which is the largest part of the working class right now. Millennials want their gay friends to be able to protect their pot plants with guns. Mm-hmm. She also says, is it getting them to believe the vote matters more here than for an R and a D? And then Lee being a fool. I thought you were leaving, you silly boy. All right, so my man, my best friend, my main man, Mark Rutherford, did not win the chair's race against Angela McArdle. She got reelected for 2 more years or 4. Okay, Mark Rutherford, important mentor in my life, important, honorable, wonderful man. You're going to hear all kinds of crazy things about how he's a puppet of someone, and I can tell you that's absolutely verifiably false. Same with Sam Goldstein. Sam was never a puppet of anyone. He's way too irascible and ornery.
Anybody ever gets them to do what they want?
Exactly. I was his employee for 3 years. Mark, there's just always these like conspiracies. I think as Mark opposes some of what goes on the LNC, that's 3/4 Mises, chaired by Mises person. Treasurer is Bill Redpath. Bill Redpath is an incredibly honorable man who has given an insane amount of time and money and energy to this party and cares a lot about ballot access and is going to do a great job of keeping this LNC honest and this chair honest financially. And Mark Rutherford is vice chair, and Mark cares a lot about procedure and rules and how things are done, which is very frustrating to somebody like Angela who wants to do whatever she wants to do. And I already had like two Mises friends say, well, this is just a win for Sarwark. Your guy's controlled by Sarwark. I'm like,
Not even remotely.
no.
Mark Rutherford does what Mark Rutherford wants.
Right.
He
Yeah.
said that to me at lunch the other day, and I've seen Mark get mad probably twice in 5 years, and no, there's not a single person.
Mark is the one who uses people, okay? That's all I'm going to say.
He's just
We call him the Godfather for a reason. Go ahead.
If any of those people are listening, I cannot think of a person who Mark aligns with on most things that he would hate more than Nick Sarwark, who blocked him twice from the chairmanship.
Yeah.
You daft mother.
Okay, this is why we don't invite Paul out.
I think-
But no, you have to understand. 2012, we were leading a takeover of the party. I mean, I was writing campaign. I was writing the office plan. If you were in 2010 or 2012 and saw the office plan for the LNC, that was written by me when Wayne Allen Root was running for chair. Mark Rutherford, it was 2010 in St. Louis, and then that's the year that Wayne ran for that, and then 2012 in Vegas is when Mark ran for chair, and Mark was going to win, and for no good goddamn reason, Nick Sarwark nominated Noda, and Mark lost by 1 vote because I love Joe, but one of our delegates went to her room because she didn't think we were voting, and it cost that, and Nick cost him the chairmanship. So I don't. There's not a lot of love loss in Indiana. I mean, I hold a grudge more than most because of my Southern Indiana roots. I don't know if Mark does. I doubt he does. He's a very grown-up person. But
we had dinner with Nick in November. They're fine. They disagree on things, and it's healthy. And
what man children don't understand is that you have to build coalitions and work with people, even if you don't like them.
Mark's
They
very good at that.
stabbed you in the back in the past. You don't.
Yeah.
I think that right there, that conversation about Mark's not that type of person is exactly why he ended up just running away with the vice chair position when he was on the ballot for it. I was shocked as anybody else that Angela still got 454 votes to become the chair again. But the fact that Mark was so close to her on that ballot, and then it was immediately turned around to let's make him the vice chair because he's going to be the voice of reason on that board. He's going to be the authority on parliamentary procedure. He's going to be the one that keeps people from being completely degrading in the LNC business email thread, which I'm so glad I'm not subscribed to it, because every time that somebody posts a screenshot from it, I'm just like, cringe.
Yeah, so Kara Schultz has it right. She says Sarwark is the boogeyman under their bed. And it's true. Like, the CIA thing came from being gifted a Stratfor subscription, which I paid for my Stratfor subscription, but I didn't get any money from the CIA. It's just these ridiculous things that they work themselves up on somebody like Nick, and you're just like, you can just disagree with him. He comes from a different place and has different beliefs than you and different views on libertarianism, but it doesn't mean he's. I don't know. But I think there's one specific reason why a lot of people in that camp don't like Nick, and it's Paul. You want to say it?
I'm not quite sure.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. We
They're
don't know what you're
racist.
talking about. We like Nick.
They're racist.
Who's racist?
I'll tell you later.
What?
It's Evan. They don't like him because of Evan. I'm just kidding.
Oh, well, they don't like Evan because of Nick.
Yeah,
Oh, I know that.
That's absolutely true.
Evan is the state chair of Indiana.
We love him.
Uh,
He does hard work.
Hoosiers have always been a voice of reason, hands down, Joe Bishop Henchman says. And Ron Milford says, what would happen if nobody voted? Obviously, it's not going to happen, but what if it did? What would be the protocol? So if Evan McMahon says, I heard that. And then Natalie says, I'm surprised more people are talking about the hot mics. So we really have to go so I can hug my baby before he goes to bed.
I really don't want to talk about the hot mics.
Let's just skip the hot mics. We don't have time, but
Jeremy Kaufman is Jeremy Kaufman.
everybody-
Jeremy Kaufman.
you get a turn if you care about what do you think Angela's future is with the party. Obviously, she went on a live stream yesterday and said, hey, if you're in a blue state, vote for Chase. If you're in a red state, vote just don't hurt Trump. I'm paraphrasing unfairly, probably, but I'm not being unfair. Okay. So go ahead, Luke.
So I personally think Angela is a politician first. I think she is stating that she's digging her heels in the ground and that she's going to stick with it because she's probably already received a job offer for Trump's campaign or Trump's team. Or
Well, that's slander or libel. I don't remember which, but let's say allegedly.
okay, allegedly. Right? I said probably.
Okay.
So I'm just like I gained a lot of respect for her this weekend because I thought that she handled the crowd pretty well, all things considered, given all of the division and all of the divisiveness, and she still did things,
She
like
needs to learn how to bang a gavel.
well.
That's the cattiest thing you've said all night.
She
doesn't know how to bang a gavel.
She didn't bang it one time in 3 days.
No,
She needed to bang the gavel.
It wouldn't have done any good. I was listening on the live stream because I couldn't hear while we were in the room, and we started taking drinks of our adult beverages every time she was saying, "Quiet,
Thank you
please.
so much.
Quiet, please. Can everybody quiet down, please?" And she was just speaking it into the
All right, future.
I don't foresee.
Did she finish her 2-year term?
I don't think she finishes her 2-year term. I think she's going probably in November or December, one way or the other.
Reinhold?
I'm kind of the same thing right there, unless somebody gets together and decides they want to push her out before that.
Chase get on the ballot in all the libertarian states? Does the LNC take Chase off the ballot and not let him run?
I don't think he gets on in all 50 just because I think it's going to be too hard to get all 50. But I also think that he's going to be taken off some ballots because it's already been
Montana tried it, yeah, right today.
They announced that they were doing it. So
yeah. Thoughts? Angela and Chase, the future.
So as far as Angela goes, when she a couple of days ago posted, "There's some questions about the candidate, and I'm going to make a statement." My only response to that was, you as the chair need to wholeheartedly stand by your candidate as the delegates nominated, both you and them, to be the standard bearers of the party. And anything less is a dereliction of your duty.
Yeah, I think they think that this is like a position, a talk radio position. This is not. This is the party functionary position. Is not the talk radio.
And
You're not. You're doing live streams. Just make a phone call and raise some money.
right. But Sarwark, to evoke his name again, got a lot of controversy when he basically said that the chair should stick by their candidate no matter who it was. And somebody, well, what if the delegates chose Hitler? Well, then his Sarwarkian answer was essentially, if you cannot be a chair for that candidate, then you do what you need to. And everyone's like, well, he says he would support Hitler. No, he was politely and poetically saying he wouldn't be the chair of a party that would nominate Hitler.
Yeah.
So if you can't be the chair of a party that nominated Chase, tenure your resignation. Nobody's keeping you here. You're not bound to it.
Kristen?
Angela's not going to give up. She is a woman in power where women haven't been in power a lot. If I was her, I wouldn't give up. If it was me up there and I was being crapped on by half my delegation, I would absolutely dig my heels in even harder. However, I would love to see her represent everybody. She is the chair of the Libertarian Party. She is all of our voices. She can't pick and choose winners like the old parties. I would absolutely love to see her be respectful to all the members and step forward and bring unity to the party. I don't see her going anywhere. I don't think that if anybody tries to vacate the chair, whether they have standing or not, we are known as the party of infighting and chaos. Let's just keep it professional, in my opinion. Indiana was an amazing delegation. We had 39 people opposing views within our party, but all of our balloting was done accurately and quickly. We all stayed on the floor for the most part. They communicated with Evan and I when they needed to get up. We were able to swap our alternates in and out. For us, in our delegation, convention went really smoothly. And I think that if Angela will put aside her personal feelings, and if people, I'm just not a hateful person. I don't go online and talk, hatefulness. I have gone online and I've said that this is embarrassing and unprofessional And I think that our leadership should be nothing but professional, and they should not let their personal feelings get in the way. I don't want my personal feelings get in the way when I'm running Indiana.
Yep.
Kara Schultz says Montana doesn't own their ballot line. They just need 5,000 signatures. So you could hire ballot
They'll
access
have
people.
ballot access for Chase.
And then Chuck Moulton says the national chair telling people to vote for Trump against the party nominated candidate should be an immediate disqualification from the office. If it isn't cause for removal, I don't know what is. So Hody, take us out. Give us your final thoughts. What are your predictions for Angela Chase and the next few weeks?
Final thoughts on everything. I'm with Kristen on Angela. I think she'll stay. I think people underestimate the Mises Caucus. They're like, they're defeated. They're defeated. They'll go away. They crop up. The thing is paleo libertarianism has been tried and tried and tried, and it keeps cycling back, and you're going to see it again. Even if the Mises Caucus goes full belly up, we are going to be dealing with this again within our lifetimes, even if they go completely belly up and Chase dismantles them. I guess, let's hear final thoughts. Rechtenwald doomed himself, not just the gummy. Anybody who knows anybody who worked in his campaign, I actually am on a show with somebody who worked on his campaign. Lying problem, immediate problem. I mean, and we're talking
allegedly.
Not allegedly. In fact, in court, actually, this actually happened.
Hody says allegedly. The Chris Spangle show does not. It says allegedly, Hody.
Chris Spangle says, okay, allegedly he went to court and had to admit the truth about his social media account, like laughing about kids killing themselves on his old college campus. He lied about getting fired. Again, allegedly, whatever we want to say, allegedly to all this stuff, right? About his social media, who controlled it, about his interactions with Joshua Smith, just had a problem with it. And even the people on his campaign would just say, like, I believe that they believed that somebody else was giving him bad advice.
Hody, I feel like I can talk to you. Michael Rechtenwald, the biggest moment of the convention, meaning the biggest moment of his campaign, takes a gummy and gets high and is too incapacitated to perform in that moment.
Yeah.
That tells me that is someone who subconsciously or consciously blows that moment up because he knows people are counting on him and then doesn't want to take the personal blame, so he blames the gummy. But he didn't want to do this. He couldn't do it. And there may be a deeper issue at work here that hopefully he can work on, that because it really feels like there's a bit of a that's a level of self-sabotage that's very concerning, like on a human level for this man.
Yeah, to
be honest.
Yeah, there's a character issue here, and my hope is that Rechtenwald stays and becomes more libertarian. I mean, the lie again, allegedly lied about the trans shooters 4 in a row or whatever. His whole campaign, look at that tweet from him, and his campaign is like, dude, delete this. This is a lie. This is a Daily Wire lie. You need to delete this. He didn't do it. Like, he had some, either he himself or somebody else pulling the strings. And here's the thing about libertarians. They don't like puppets. So even if you are a total evil person, if you are your own entity evil person, you will probably do better among libertarians. Let's see, you're going in the future. I love Chase. I think you'll love his campaign. I'm really actually very excited about it. I believe he will outperform RFK. I will take the Mises Caucus up on that challenge. I believe he will do it. And then finally, and it was only addressed briefly, if we're not going to talk about the hot mic, that's fine. But I do want to say bigotry sucks. If you hear somebody talking about how race science and how Jeremy Kauffman inspired them and is ignoring study after study after study, and not state studies, I'm just saying studies, like, please correct that person. My issue with like the Mises Caucus culture is that they stood aside when the worst of the worst did what they did. And then look what happened. This guy, the hot mic, his name was Avi Rachlin.
What was said on the hot mic?
Okay,
he said to give me like a 1-minute summary of the hot mic.
I'll do it real quick. I can probably do it faster than that.
Hody gets to talk, so we can go
He said Chase was a communist and only registered communist and only recently converted to libertarian values. He talked about how stereotypes are earned; they are not given.
And this was going out over what? C-SPAN?
This was going out over I think C-SPAN had packed up by that point, but it was live on YouTube and
So it was
anybody
after Trump, before the rebuttal.
This was
right?
right before, I think, Rechtenwald v. Chase v. Noda, maybe, or that time frame ish.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, gets up there while they're doing balloting and just goes off. Talks about like how penis sizes are different. Talks about how individualism
They are.
won't work.
Kristen says they are. So
Talks about, well, that's true among men. That's true. Among how
Paul, you don't have to agree so hard.
I'm talking
Go ahead,
about individualism won't work in America, that we need collectivism until we have a single culture, because multiculturalism won't work. Terrible, awful, debunked, terrible. Like even if you believe all the bigoted stuff, just Chase being a communist until recently is very ironic when you're supporting Rechtenwald, who in 2020 was a literal Marxist, right? Like called himself that. So just gets up, says a bunch of lies, says a bunch of bigoted stuff. And what happens is when people hear it, finally, they go, hey, can we cut the mics here? As opposed to like, dude, you need to stop. Now, I understand it was very loud on the floor. However, enough people heard it and it was insulated that something should have been said. This is the problem when you have a culture. And this will be my very final thought. This will come back to bite you, Mises Caucus. You might have thought the Happy Holidays thing and all the stuff LPNH was doing was very funny. And that this guy, Avi Rachlin, who even off of this moment had likes to use the N-word, is recorded doing it publicly, talked about how women can be assaulted if they are wearing the wrong clothes. No joke. This is all part of his persona. Okay. You do nothing about these people. It comes back to bite not just you, but libertarianism. Why didn't Defend the Guard pass in New Hampshire? Because the guy who had to sign it said, oh, who's associated with it? It's the Happy Holidays people. Not signing it. Listen, politicians should do the right thing regardless of who offends their feelings, but they're politicians. You as libertarians should know they are looking for an excuse to take your freedoms. You're the people who tell me this. You don't have Defend the Guard in New Hampshire because you did nothing to stop the jackassery when you saw it. You might have thought it was funny. You might say, I personally agree, disagree. Ultimately, it doesn't benefit liberty. When you let these people in, they will use an excuse to dismiss libertarianism, and libertarians, please clean up your culture. If you see cancer, kill cancer. Chase Oliver 2024. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, Hody,
To Hody's point on that, you're free to do and say as you like. You are not free from the consequences of those words and actions.
Nor are we free to associate with you.
Absolutely.
I will be waiting for the good Mises people to step up.
A lot of,
I'll make myself comfortable.
There have been, I think there are Mises people that have been in the audience that are not there anymore for these reasons. Mm-hmm. The thing that I think you need to understand is the Mises Caucus guys who are like, they're gone for these reasons. Like right. they quiet quit.
Right. And a lot of the former Mises people are some of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. Yeah. I have no problem with them because they spoke with their actions.
Hody, pay attention to this one here. This little comment. But you guys, this is a cute show and all, but Joseph Heine says "ma racists," and he says go join the Democrat Party. And the guy that has a butt name says the party's over, that the cucks took over. So
I didn't know Angela was a cuck, but that's interesting. I
right.
Don't shame anybody.
Your name is a butt, Heine. So, all right. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to my panel of guests and everybody for coming in. Luke, you may do a quick plug. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Just so everybody knows, I'm running for Hancock County Council at large in Greenfield. And please go to lomaxforhancockcounty.com and donate to my page. I need to get money so I can have signs. I got 30,000 people that are voting in Hancock County, and I need about 37% of those to vote for me in order to get a seat. So please go in, support. If you like what you hear me say, check out my videos.
And we would be remiss if we didn't say, you sparked my memory, Phil Miller passed away 2 days ago, who is a former elected libertarian to the Greenfield City Council. Great man, really cared a lot about the party, cared a lot about stored in the history. So we just wanted to say all the best and thoughts and prayers for your family, and safe home to Phil. Thanks so much for joining us. If you like this, if you learned something, please share it with your friends and say, hey, look, here's a reasonable alternative to everything else. Thanks so much for joining us here on We Are Libertarians. We'll talk to you again soon.